I should have known something was wrong when she said, "Oh no," before catching herself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, when life was perfect, predictable, and everything I thought I wanted. My name is Dan Peterson, and for 42 years, I believed I understood how the world worked. You work hard, treat people fairly, build something meaningful, and life rewards you accordingly. I'd built Peterson Commercial Properties from nothing into a thriving business that generated enough income to support our family's comfortable lifestyle in Plano, Texas. Kate and I had been married for 16 years, and we had 2 kids who were the center of our universe. Emma, 14, and destined for greatness if her academic achievements were any indication, and Tyler, 11, and already showing promise on the basketball court where I coached his team every Tuesday and Thursday. Kate was the principal of Meadowbrook Elementary, one of the most prestigious schools in our district. Parents competed to get their children enrolled there, knowing that Kate's leadership and innovative programs gave their kids advantages that would follow them through their academic careers. She earned respect not just from her staff and students, but from the entire educational community. At school board meetings, when Kate spoke, people listened. When she recommended policy changes, they were implemented. She was everything you'd want in an educator: passionate, dedicated, and absolutely committed to excellence. Our Thursday night routine had become sacred over the years. The first Thursday of every month, I'd drive over to James Wright's house for poker with the same group I'd been playing with since college. Kevin Brooks, Anthony Martinez, James, and myself. We'd been gathering monthly for nearly 2 decades, through marriages, divorces, job changes, and all the evolution that comes with middle age. Kate used these evenings for her own social time, usually organizing movie nights with the other teachers or catching up on administrative work that required uninterrupted focus. The routine was comfortable, predictable, and exactly what I thought I wanted from life. 6 weeks before everything changed, I started noticing subtle shifts in Kate's behavior. Nothing dramatic or immediately alarming, just small variations in our established patterns that my business-trained mind couldn't help but catalog. She'd always been dedicated to fitness, but suddenly she was going to the gym 5 days a week instead of 3. New workout clothes appeared in her closet, expensive brands that seemed designed more for appearance than functionality. Her faculty meetings were running later, sometimes keeping her at school until 7 or 8 in the evening. When I'd ask about these longer days, Kate would launch into detailed explanations about new state education standards and the additional curriculum planning required to maintain Meadowbrook's excellence. It made sense. Kate had always been thorough, and if the state was demanding more, she'd be the first to exceed their expectations. She'd built her reputation on going above and beyond, so longer hours seemed like a natural evolution of her professional commitment. The kids noticed the changes too, though they processed them differently. Emma complained that Mom was distracted during homework help sessions, responding to texts while explaining algebra problems. Tyler mentioned that Mom had missed his last 2 games, something that had never happened before. Kate's attendance at family events had been perfect for years. She prided herself on being present for every milestone, every achievement, every moment that mattered to our children. Her phone behavior shifted as well. Kate had always been casual about her device, leaving it on kitchen counters or asking me to answer texts while she was driving. Suddenly, the phone was always with her, face down during dinner, and protected with a new passcode she claimed was required by the school district for security purposes. When I'd joke about needing to borrow it to call the kids, she'd quickly offer to make the call herself rather than sharing the device. The most significant change was Blake Garrett's arrival at Meadowbrook Elementary. Kate had hired him as the new PE coordinator in August, and from the moment he started, his name appeared constantly in Kate's conversations. Blake was revolutionizing the physical education program with innovative fitness initiatives. Blake had fresh ideas about student wellness that aligned perfectly with Kate's vision for comprehensive education. Blake was helping coordinate after-school programs that would set Meadowbrook apart from other elementary schools. I'd never met Blake personally, but from Kate's descriptions, he seemed like the perfect addition to her team. 36 years old, recently divorced, and relocating from Austin where he'd apparently made significant improvements to their district's fitness programs. Kate spoke about him with the same enthusiasm she reserved for particularly promising students or breakthrough teaching methods. If I had any concerns, they were professional rather than personal. Kate was investing significant time and energy into ensuring Blake's success, and I worried she might be neglecting other aspects of the school's administration. Looking back, I realize how perfectly Kate managed the information flow about Blake. She shared just enough details to make his presence seem natural and work-related, while carefully avoiding any information that might have triggered my concern. I never heard about Blake staying late for planning sessions, never learned about their frequent text exchanges, and certainly never discovered that their curriculum development meetings often took place in locations far from Meadowbrook Elementary. The Thursday evening poker games continued as scheduled throughout this period, providing a comfortable escape from work stress and family responsibilities. James's finished basement had become our regular venue, complete with a professional quality poker table, comfortable chairs, and a bar area where we could grab drinks between hands. The atmosphere was casual but competitive. We'd all been successful in our respective careers, and none of us enjoyed losing, even in friendly games. During one of our September games, Kevin mentioned that he hadn't seen Kate at any recent social gatherings. The comment was casual, part of a broader conversation about how busy everyone had become, but it stuck with me. Kate had been absent from several community events where she'd previously been a consistent presence. When I'd asked her about missing the annual neighborhood barbecue, she'd explained that she was working on a grant proposal that could bring significant funding to Meadowbrook. The explanation satisfied me at the time, but Kevin's observation made me realize that Kate's absences had become a pattern rather than isolated incidents. October 12th started like any other Thursday. Kate left early for what she described as a breakfast meeting with the superintendent to discuss district-wide implementation of Meadowbrook's wellness programs. I handled the morning routine with Emma and Tyler, making sure they had everything needed for school and confirming their after-school activities. Emma was staying late for Honor Society preparations, and Tyler had basketball practice until 5:30, which meant I'd pick him up on my way to poker. The day at the office followed its usual pattern of client meetings, property showings, and administrative tasks that come with managing a growing business. I'd been working on a particularly complex commercial lease negotiation that required careful attention to zoning restrictions and tenant improvement allowances. The deal represented 6 months of relationship building with a potential client, and closing it successfully would generate enough commission to fund Emma's college education and Tyler's private basketball training. Around 4 o'clock, I confirmed the evening's plans by texting James about what time I should arrive and whether I needed to bring anything besides my usual contribution to the food and drinks. James responded immediately, expressing enthusiasm about trying out a new deck of cards he'd purchased and joking about taking my money with his allegedly improved poker skills. I picked up Tyler from basketball practice as planned, listening to his excited description of a new play their coach was implementing and his optimism about their chances in the upcoming tournament. Tyler's passion for basketball reminded me of my own competitive drive at his age, and I found these conversations energizing rather than tedious. We stopped at home so he could shower and grab a snack before Kate returned from her district meeting. At 5:45, I was in my car heading toward James's house when my phone rang. James's name appeared on the display, and I answered expecting some last-minute detail about the evening's plans. "Dan, I'm really sorry, but I have to cancel tonight," James said, his voice carrying the exhaustion that comes with genuine illness. "Food poisoning hit me about an hour ago, and I can barely stand up. There's no way I can host." "That's terrible, man. Do you need anything? Should someone come check on you?" No, I'll be fine. Just need to sleep it off. Can we reschedule for next week?" "Of course. Take care of yourself." I ended the call and immediately felt a surge of unexpected happiness. An unscheduled evening at home with Kate sounded perfect. We could order takeout, watch a movie, and enjoy the kind of relaxed time together that our busy schedules rarely allowed. I called Kate to share the good news. "Hey babe, poker's canceled. James is sick. I'm heading home now." There was a pause, followed by Kate's response. "Oh no, okay, that's fine. See you soon, honey." The words hit me like cold water. "Oh no" was not the appropriate response to news that her husband would be home early for an unexpected evening together. Kate should have been pleased, excited, or at minimum neutral about the change in plans. Instead, her initial reaction suggested that my early return was problematic, something to be managed rather than celebrated. I ended the call and continued driving toward home, but my mind was now processing Kate's response with the same analytical attention I applied to complex business negotiations. The pause between, "oh no," and her correction suggested she'd caught herself revealing an inappropriate emotional response. The quick recovery and artificially casual tone that followed indicated she was managing information rather than simply reacting naturally to unexpected news. By the time I reached our neighborhood, I decided to observe rather than immediately confront. If Kate was simply tired from a long day or distracted by work concerns, my suspicions would prove unfounded and I'd avoid unnecessary conflict. If something else was happening, careful observation would provide better information than direct confrontation. I pulled into our driveway at 6:15, 90 minutes earlier than my usual Thursday return time. Kate's Honda was in its normal position, but parked beside it was a dark blue BMW sedan that I didn't recognize. The car was clean, relatively new, and displayed the kind of aggressive styling that appealed to younger drivers seeking to project success and athleticism. I parked and approached the house through our front entrance, noting that the living room lights were dimmed and soft music was playing, unusual for a Thursday evening when Kate would typically be grading papers or preparing lessons for Friday. The formal dining room was set with our good china, crystal wine glasses, and what appeared to be our wedding candles arranged as a centerpiece. The scene was clearly designed for romantic dining rather than curriculum planning or administrative work. I entered quietly, setting my keys on the kitchen counter and observing additional evidence that contradicted Kate's claimed schedule. 2 wine glasses sat in the sink, both showing residual wine that indicated recent use. An expensive bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, one from our collection that we typically reserved for anniversaries and special celebrations, stood open on the counter with approximately half its contents remaining. The timeline didn't support Kate's story. She'd claimed to be attending a district meeting until 8 o'clock, which meant the house should have been empty. Instead, evidence suggested she'd been entertaining someone with wine, candles, and careful attention to ambiance. I positioned myself in the living room where I could observe both the kitchen and the hallway leading to our master bedroom. Whatever was happening, I wanted complete information before deciding how to respond. My business experience had taught me that premature reactions often led to poor outcomes, while patience and careful observation usually revealed the most effective course of action. At 6:25, I heard movement from the direction of our bedroom, followed by Kate's voice speaking quietly to someone. The words were indistinct, but the tone was intimate rather than professional. A male voice responded, equally quiet, followed by the sound of our master bathroom door closing. A few moments later, Kate emerged from the hallway, her hair slightly disheveled, despite obvious attempts to smooth it back into place. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something more fitted and elegant than her typical school attire. Her makeup had been refreshed, but I could detect the subtle signs of recent intimate activity that 16 years of marriage had taught me to recognize. "Dan, you're home early," she said, her voice carrying forced brightness that couldn't quite mask her obvious nervousness. "How was your day?" "James got food poisoning, so poker was canceled. I thought I'd surprise you with an early evening together." Kate moved immediately to the kitchen, where she began unnecessarily rearranging items and wiping already clean surfaces. "Oh, that's wonderful. I just got home myself. The meeting ended earlier than expected, so I thought I'd make everything nice for when you got back from poker. The house looks beautiful. Special occasion?" "Just wanted everything perfect for us," Kate replied, her movements becoming more frantic as she attempted to clean the evidence I'd already observed. "You know how much I enjoy creating a romantic atmosphere." I watched her dispose of the wine glasses and attempt to hide the open bottle. Her explanation made no sense. If she'd been planning a romantic evening, she would have waited for my return before opening wine or setting up candles. The evidence clearly indicated she'd been entertaining someone else and was now scrambling to manage my unexpected arrival. "Kate, when I called to tell you poker was canceled, you said, 'oh no,' before correcting yourself. The house is set up for dinner, there's an open bottle of our anniversary wine, and there's a BMW in our driveway that I don't recognize. Who just left?" Kate's face went through a rapid series of expressions. Surprise, fear, calculation, and finally resignation. "What? No one. I was just entertaining myself. You know how I sometimes practice for when we have guests? The BMW? I don't know whose that is. Maybe a neighbor's guest?" I pulled out my phone and opened our doorbell camera app, scrolling back through the afternoon's footage, At 4:30, the camera clearly showed a man arriving at our front door and being welcomed inside by Kate. He was tall, athletic, with dark hair and the kind of confident posture that suggested someone comfortable with physical attention. Kate, I'm looking at doorbell footage of a man arriving at 4:30. You kissed him at the door. Who is he? The evidence was undeniable and Kate's remaining defenses crumbled. She sat down heavily in one of our kitchen chairs, her hands shaking as she struggled to find words. It's Blake Garrett from school. But Dan, it's not what you think. We're just friends who got carried away. It doesn't mean anything. Blake Garrett, the PE coordinator you've been talking about constantly for the past 6 weeks. Yes, but the one you've been staying late to help with curriculum planning. Dan, please, let me explain. How long has this been going on? Kate's silence provided the answer before she spoke. About 6 weeks. But it's just emotional, Dan. We connect on a professional level, and sometimes that connection felt more personal. I sat down across from her, my mind processing the implications of her admission. 6 weeks of deception, 6 weeks of lying about her schedule, 6 weeks of intimate conversations and professional meetings that were actually romantic encounters. Define got carried away. We've been intimate, but only recently, and it doesn't change how I feel about you and our family. How recently? 3 times. Today was only the 3rd time. I stood up and walked to our bedroom, where I discovered that our bed sheets had been changed and the room had been carefully cleaned. Blake's cologne still lingered in the air, and Kate had obviously spent considerable time ensuring that evidence of their encounter was minimized. When I returned to the kitchen, Kate was crying quietly, her hands covering her face. Dan, I never meant for this to happen. Blake understands me in ways that it's like we share the same vision for education, and that professional connection became personal. Where have you been meeting him? Mostly at school after hours. Sometimes at the Marriott courtyard for lunch when we need to discuss confidential student matters. Student matters that require hotel meetings? Kate's story was dissolving under basic scrutiny. I'd conducted enough business negotiations to recognize when someone was providing selective information rather than complete honesty. Each answer raised additional questions that Kate couldn't address without revealing more deception. I need you to be completely honest with me, Kate. How many times have you been intimate with Blake? 3 times, like I said. How many times have you met him outside of school? Kate hesitated. Maybe 15 or 20 times. But most of those were just talking, planning lessons, discussing his transition to Meadowbrook. How many text messages and phone calls? I don't know. We communicate frequently about school matters. I opened my laptop and accessed our phone account, scrolling through Kate's call and text history. The data revealed a pattern that was impossible to explain as professional communication. Over the past 8 weeks, Kate and Blake had exchanged 423 text messages and 67 phone calls, many occurring during evening hours and weekends when school business would be inappropriate. The evidence painted a clear picture of an emotional and physical affair that had been carefully concealed through systematic deception about Kate's schedule, activities, and the nature of her relationship with Blake. Kate, I'm looking at our phone records. You've texted Blake 423 times in 8 weeks. The longest call was 47 minutes at 11:30 on a Sunday night. This isn't professional communication. Kate looked at the phone data with the expression of someone confronting undeniable evidence of their deception. Dan, I know how this looks, but you have to understand that Blake and I connect intellectually in ways that... Stop. I don't want to hear about your connection with Blake. I want to know what this means for our marriage and our family. Kate reached across the table, attempting to take my hand. It means nothing for our marriage. Blake is just... He fills a professional void that I didn't realize existed. You and I have different interests, different ways of seeing the world. With Blake, I can discuss educational theory and student psychology without having to explain basic concepts. So our 16-year marriage is inadequate because I don't share your professional interests. That's not what I meant. Dan, you're successful in real estate because you understand numbers and negotiations and business relationships. I'm successful in education because I understand child development and learning theory and administrative leadership. Blake and I speak the same language professionally. And that professional language requires hotel meetings and intimate encounters in our marital bed? Kate had no response that could reconcile her claimed emotional connection with the physical evidence of her affair. The conversation continued for another hour, with Kate alternating between attempts to minimize the significance of her relationship with Blake and efforts to explain how her professional dissatisfaction had led to personal vulnerability. By 8 o'clock, I had enough information to understand the scope of Kate's deception and infidelity. The next morning, I contacted Lisa Turner, a private investigator who specialized in matrimonial cases and had been recommended by Robert Hayes, an attorney I'd worked with on commercial real estate transactions. Lisa's initial consultation revealed that documenting adultery in Texas required specific types of evidence: photographs, videos, witness testimony, or recordings that clearly established the intimate nature of the relationship. While Kate had admitted to the affair, her admissions alone wouldn't provide the legal foundation needed for a fault-based divorce that would protect my financial interests and parental rights. "What you've discovered provides a strong starting point," Lisa explained during our meeting in her downtown Dallas office. "But we need systematic documentation that establishes the pattern of deception, the violation of her professional responsibilities, and the impact on your children and family finances." "What does that involve?" "Surveillance of their meetings, documentation of their communication patterns, and evidence that this relationship has compromised her professional duties. If she's having an affair with a subordinate employee, that's an ethics violation that could result in termination and loss of her pension benefits." The investigation lasted 3 weeks and revealed the full extent of Kate's deception. Blake and Kate were meeting regularly at the Marriott Courtyard, where they'd reserved rooms for curriculum planning sessions that lasted between 2 and 4 hours. Kate had been falsifying her timesheets to claim administrative work during these meetings, and she'd been authorizing Blake's overtime payments for hours when they were actually together off campus. Lisa's surveillance also revealed that Blake had a history of inappropriate relationships with married colleagues. At his previous position in Austin, he'd been investigated for sexual harassment and had received a written reprimand for conducting personal relationships with supervisors. The Austin School District had declined to renew his contract, and he'd been forced to seek employment elsewhere to continue his education career. Most significantly, the investigation documented that Kate had been using her position as principal to provide Blake with preferential treatment that violated district policies on professional conduct and conflict of interest. She'd approved his vacation requests without following standard procedures, assigned him to preferred schedules, and excluded other PE staff from planning meetings where Blake's proposals were developed and approved. The evidence package that Lisa compiled included photographs of Kate and Blake entering and leaving the hotel, recordings of their phone conversations obtained through legal surveillance methods, documentation of falsified timesheets and unauthorized overtime payments, and witness statements from Meadowbrook staff who had observed their inappropriate workplace behavior. With comprehensive evidence in hand, I scheduled a meeting with Patricia Coleman, a school board member who had known our family for 8 years through our children's academic achievements and community involvement. Patricia was also chair of the board's personnel committee, which meant she had authority to initiate investigations into employee misconduct. "Dan, I'm shocked by what you're telling me," Patricia said after reviewing the evidence Lisa had compiled. "Kate has always been one of our most respected principals, but if these allegations are true, she's violated multiple district policies and potentially compromised the integrity of our educational programs. What happens next?" "I'll need to present this to the full board in executive session. If they agree that an investigation is warranted, we'll engage an independent investigator to review the evidence and interview relevant witnesses. Depending on what they find, Kate could face anything from a written reprimand to termination for moral turpitude." "And Blake? If he's been involved in an inappropriate relationship with his supervisor, and if he's falsified documents or accepted unauthorized compensation, he'll likely be terminated immediately. The board has zero tolerance for this type of misconduct." The school board investigation moved quickly once Patricia presented the evidence in executive session. Within 2 weeks, both Kate and Blake were suspended pending the outcome of a formal investigation conducted by an independent firm that specialized in educational misconduct cases. The investigator, Janet Williams, interviewed Meadowbrook staff, reviewed personnel files, and examined financial records related to Blake's employment and compensation. Her report, completed 10 days later, confirmed every allegation in Lisa's evidence package and revealed additional misconduct that hadn't been previously documented. Kate had been manipulating student placement decisions to ensure that Blake's classes included children whose parents were influential in the community, hoping to generate positive feedback about his performance. She'd also been excluding other PE staff from professional development opportunities that she was providing exclusively to Blake, creating resentment and morale problems among the broader physical education team. Most damaging to Kate's career prospects, the investigation revealed that she'd used school district resources, including her principal's office, school phones, and administrative supplies, to conduct her personal relationship with Blake. Email records showed that they'd been exchanging intimate messages using the district's computer system, and security footage confirmed that they'd been meeting in Kate's office after hours for encounters that were clearly non-professional. The school board met in emergency session on November 3rd to review the investigators' report and determine appropriate sanctions. Based on the evidence of professional misconduct, ethics violations, and misuse of public resources, the board voted unanimously to terminate both Kate and Blake for moral turpitude. Kate's termination meant the immediate loss of her principal's salary, forfeiture of her pension benefits, and permanent disqualification from administrative positions in Texas public schools. Blake's termination included a notation in his personnel file that would make future employment in education virtually impossible. The personnel actions were reported to the Texas Education Agency, which maintains a database of educators who have been terminated for misconduct. Both Kate and Blake were added to the database, effectively ending their careers in public education throughout the state. News of the terminations spread quickly through Plano's close-knit educational community. Parents who had entrusted their children to Kate's leadership felt betrayed by her unprofessional conduct and abuse of her position. Teachers who had respected her leadership questioned whether her previous decisions had been based on educational merit or personal preferences. The local newspaper, the Plano Star-Courier, obtained copies of the school board's public records related to the terminations and published a front-page story under the headline, "Meadowbrook Principal Terminated for Ethics Violations." While the article didn't include explicit details of Kate's affair, it provided enough information about professional misconduct and inappropriate relationships for readers to understand the general nature of her behavior. The community response was swift and decisive. Kate received a formal letter from our Homeowners Association requesting her resignation from the Architectural Review Committee, where she'd served for 6 years reviewing and approving home improvement projects. The PTA board, on which Kate had served as secretary, voted to remove her from all positions and exclude her from future volunteer opportunities. Most significantly for our family's social standing, Kate was asked to step down from her leadership positions at Preston Road Methodist Church, where she'd served as youth ministry coordinator and adult education committee chair. The church leadership, while expressing compassion for our family's situation, concluded that Kate's professional misconduct disqualified her from positions of trust and authority within the congregation. The social consequences extended beyond formal organizations to our personal relationships and community standing. Kate had been a respected figure at neighborhood gatherings, school board meetings, and community events. Her termination for moral turpitude meant that families who had sought her advice on educational matters now questioned her judgment and integrity. Parents who had competed to get their children enrolled at Meadowbrook now worried about the impact of Kate's leadership on their kids' academic experiences. Some requested transfers to other schools, concerned that programs Kate had implemented might be tainted by her poor judgment and unprofessional conduct. The isolation Kate experienced was particularly acute because Plano's educational community is relatively small and interconnected. Teachers, administrators, and school board members throughout the district knew about Kate's termination, and her reputation preceded her in any professional context where she might seek employment. Blake's situation was even more challenging because his misconduct followed a previous pattern of inappropriate relationships in Austin. The Texas education community is tight-knit, and word of his behavior spread quickly through informal networks of administrators and HR personnel. He was effectively blacklisted from educational employment throughout the state. 3 weeks after the school board's decision, Blake informed Kate that he was ending their relationship and leaving Texas to seek employment in another state where his educational misconduct wouldn't be widely known. Kate was devastated by his abandonment, realizing that their deep connection had been largely opportunistic rather than genuinely romantic. Blake's departure left Kate completely isolated. terminated from her career, excluded from her community leadership roles, abandoned by the man for whom she'd sacrificed her marriage and reputation, and facing the prospect of rebuilding her life without the professional identity that had defined her for 15 years. While Kate was experiencing the consequences of her choices, I was focused on protecting our children and preserving my own professional reputation. Emma and Tyler had been shielded from the explicit details of Kate's affair, but they couldn't avoid the broader community knowledge of her termination and the circumstances surrounding it. Emma, now 15 and highly attuned to social dynamics, was embarrassed by the attention Kate's situation brought to our family. Friends' parents would ask carefully worded questions about our family's stability, and Emma felt obligated to defend Kate while privately questioning her mother's judgment. Tyler, at 12, was more confused than embarrassed. He didn't understand why mom wasn't working anymore, or why she seemed sad all the time. Several parents on his basketball team had approached me to express support and ensure that Tyler's participation wouldn't be affected by our family's situation. I made the decision to file for divorce in early November, after consulting with Robert Hayes about the legal implications of Kate's misconduct and termination. Texas allows fault-based divorce in cases of adultery, and the evidence Lisa had compiled provided clear grounds for holding Kate responsible for the marriage's dissolution. The divorce petition included requests for primary custody of Emma and Tyler, based on Kate's demonstrated poor judgment and the instability created by her job loss. I also sought protection of marital assets, including our home, my business interests, and retirement accounts that Kate's actions had potentially jeopardized. Kate retained her own attorney, Margaret Foster, who attempted to negotiate a settlement that would provide Kate with sufficient assets to rebuild her life while acknowledging her responsibility for the marriage's failure. Margaret's position was that Kate's affair was a temporary lapse in judgment caused by professional stress and personal dissatisfaction, not a fundamental character flaw that should result in permanent financial hardship. However, Kate's bargaining position was severely weakened by the documented evidence of her deception, the loss of her career, and the community's reaction to her misconduct. She had no income, limited prospects for future employment, and no credible explanation for her behavior that would generate sympathy from a judge or jury. The custody evaluation, conducted by Dr. Sandra Martinez, included private interviews with Emma and Tyler about their preferences for living arrangements and their relationships with both parents. While Dr. Martinez's report remained confidential, her recommendations to the court clearly favored primary custody with me, based on the children's expressed preferences and their need for stability during a difficult family transition. Emma, now 16, had watched Kate's career destruction and social isolation with increasing maturity and disappointment. She told Dr. Martinez that while she loved her mother, she'd lost respect for Kate's judgment and preferred the stability that came with living primarily with me. Tyler, despite his younger age, had drawn similar conclusions about which parent provided better emotional security and consistent guidance. He was angry with Kate for causing disruption to his routine and embarrassed by the attention her termination had brought to their family. The divorce was finalized in March, 7 months after the poker night that changed everything. Kate received limited financial support, enough to rent a modest apartment and maintain basic living expenses while she sought new employment, but far less than she would have received in a no-fault divorce where assets are divided equally. Kate retained visitation rights with Emma and Tyler, but the children's preference for spending time with me meant that her actual contact was less frequent than the court order allowed. Emma often chose to skip scheduled weekends with Kate, preferring to focus on academic activities and college preparation. Tyler was more willing to maintain regular contact, but he clearly preferred our house and routine to Kate's smaller apartment and diminished circumstances. The financial terms of the divorce reflected Kate's fault in the marriage's dissolution and her reduced earning potential following her termination. I retained our home, my business assets, and the majority of our retirement savings. Kate received a small portion of our joint assets and temporary spousal support that would terminate if she remarried or cohabitated with another partner. Most importantly for our children's future, I maintained control over their college savings accounts and educational decision-making. Kate's input on school choices and academic planning was reduced to advisory rather than equal decision-making authority. The community's response to the divorce proceedings was generally supportive of my position and critical of Kate's actions. Business colleagues expressed admiration for how I'd handled a difficult situation with dignity and focus on protecting the children. Several clients specifically mentioned that my professionalism during the divorce process had strengthened their confidence in my business judgment and personal character. My real estate business actually grew during this period, as community members who respected how I'd managed the crisis referred new clients and opportunities. The personal integrity I demonstrated in a challenging situation translated into enhanced professional credibility that generated new business relationships and increased revenue. Kate's efforts to rebuild her career were hampered by her termination for moral turpitude and the widespread knowledge of her misconduct within Texas educational circles. She applied for positions in other states, but reference checks invariably revealed the circumstances of her departure from Meadowbrook Elementary. After 6 months of unsuccessful job searching, Kate accepted a position as assistant manager at a large retail store in a neighboring town. The work was completely unrelated to her educational background and paid less than 1/3 of her previous principal's salary. The position required evening and weekend hours that further limited her time with Emma and Tyler. Blake's situation was even more challenging. His departure from Texas led to employment as a fitness trainer at a corporate gym chain, where his education background was irrelevant, and his earning potential was limited to hourly wages, plus commission from personal training clients. He'd effectively abandoned his career in education for temporary physical attraction to a married woman who had also sacrificed her professional standing for their relationship. 18 months after the poker night cancellation that revealed Kate's affair, our family had stabilized into a new routine that was healthier and more honest than what had existed before. Emma was thriving academically and had been accepted early decision to the University of Texas with substantial scholarship support. Tyler had become an even stronger basketball player and student, benefiting from the increased attention and stability that came with living primarily with me. I'd begun dating Dr. Amanda Foster, a child psychologist who had provided counseling support to Emma and Tyler during the divorce proceedings. Amanda's professional background in family therapy meant she understood the complexities of blended families and the importance of gradual relationship development when children are involved. Emma and Tyler both liked Amanda and appreciated her thoughtful approach to becoming part of our lives. Rather than trying to replace Kate, Amanda focused on supporting their emotional health and academic success while building genuine friendship that might evolve into a more maternal role over time. Kate's visitation with the children had settled into a pattern of twice-monthly dinners and occasional weekend activities. The relationships remained cordial but distant, with Emma and Tyler maintaining respect for Kate as their mother, while preferring the stability and opportunities available in my home. The most significant long-term consequence of Kate's affair was the complete transformation of her professional and social identity. She'd spent 15 years building a reputation as an innovative educator and community leader, only to destroy that legacy through 6 weeks of poor judgment and deceptive behavior. The educational community in Texas has long institutional memory, and Kate's termination for moral turpitude would follow her throughout any attempt to return to school administration. Even if she completed additional education or training, the circumstances of her departure from Meadowbrook would make future employment in educational leadership nearly impossible. Her social isolation within our community remained complete. Former colleagues avoided contact, and community organizations where she'd previously held leadership positions had moved forward with new personnel who weren't associated with her misconduct. The network of professional and personal relationships she'd spent years developing had been permanently severed by her ethical violations. Blake's career destruction was equally comprehensive. His pattern of inappropriate relationships with married colleagues had made him unemployable in educational settings throughout multiple states. The specialized skills he developed in physical education and curriculum development were worthless in other industries, forcing him to accept entry-level positions with limited advancement potential. 2 years after the divorce, I was elected to the Plano School Board, where I could contribute to educational policy while ensuring that the type of misconduct Kate had engaged in would be quickly identified and appropriately sanctioned. My experience with investigating and documenting educator misconduct had given me insights that proved valuable in developing better oversight procedures for administrator behavior. Emma graduated as valedictorian of her high school class and enrolled at the University of Texas with full scholarship support for her undergraduate education. She maintained limited contact with Kate, but credited my support and stability for her academic success and emotional resilience. Tyler developed into one of the top basketball players in our district and earned attention from college scouts while maintaining excellent academic performance. The father-son relationship we'd strengthened during the crisis had provided him with confidence and work ethic that served him well in both athletics and academics. My business continued to grow, and I'd expanded Peterson Commercial Properties to include residential development projects that leveraged my reputation for integrity and attention to detail. The professional credibility I'd maintained during Kate's crisis had created opportunities for larger deals and more sophisticated clients. Amanda and I were married in a small ceremony attended by close friends, family, and Emma and Tyler. The relationship had developed slowly and thoughtfully, with particular attention to ensuring that the children were comfortable with the transition and supportive of our commitment to each other. 3 years after that Thursday night when poker was canceled, life had evolved into something better than what Kate and I had shared. The comfortable routine I'd previously valued had been replaced by genuine partnership, honest communication, and family relationships based on mutual respect rather than convenient assumptions. Kate's attempts to rebuild her life had met with limited success. She'd been promoted to store manager at her retail position, but the work remained unfulfilling and poorly compensated compared to her previous career. She'd attempted to return to school for additional training but struggled with the financial cost and time demands of education while working full-time. Her relationship with Emma and Tyler had improved somewhat as the immediate crisis faded, but she remained a peripheral figure in their daily lives. The children were polite and respectful during their visits, but they'd clearly established their primary emotional attachments and future planning around my household rather than hers. Blake had moved to Colorado, where he was working as a fitness trainer and attempting to rebuild his career outside of education. His relationship with Kate had ended completely when he left Texas, and they'd had no contact since his departure. The deep connection they'd claimed to share had proven to be temporary physical attraction combined with poor judgment about appropriate professional boundaries. The broader community had moved forward as well. Meadowbrook Elementary had hired a new principal who'd restored confidence in the school's leadership and administration. The programs Kate had developed were continued or modified based on educational merit rather than personal relationships, and the staff had regained the professional focus that her misconduct had disrupted. The school board had implemented new policies requiring disclosure of personal relationships between supervisors and subordinates, mandatory training on professional boundaries, and enhanced oversight of administrator decision-making. Kate's misconduct had resulted in systemic improvements that would help prevent similar situations in the future. Looking back on the events that started with James's canceled poker game, I realized that Kate's affair had actually revealed underlying problems in our marriage that I'd been unwilling or unable to recognize. We'd been living parallel lives, professionally successful, socially respected, and family-focused, but lacking the genuine emotional connection that sustains long-term relationships. Kate's claim that Blake understood her in ways I didn't was probably accurate. My focus on business success and family logistics had left little time or energy for exploring Kate's intellectual interests or professional challenges. We'd fallen into comfortable routines that met our practical needs while neglecting the emotional and intellectual intimacy that keeps marriages vibrant. However, Kate's response to that dissatisfaction, conducting a deceptive affair that violated her professional responsibilities and jeopardized our children's stability, was inexcusable regardless of whatever legitimate concerns she might have had about our relationship. Adultery was a choice, not an inevitable result of marital problems, and she'd made that choice repeatedly over 6 weeks while lying systematically about her activities and commitments. The systematic revenge that followed Kate's discovery wasn't something I'd planned or anticipated. Instead, it was the natural consequence of her poor judgment in conducting an affair with a subordinate employee while serving in a position of public trust. Her professional misconduct had made termination inevitable once the evidence was properly documented and presented to appropriate authorities. The social consequences Kate experienced weren't the result of community vindictiveness, but rather the predictable response of parents, educators, and community leaders who had trusted her with their children's education and their organization's reputation. When that trust was violated through documented misconduct, the loss of confidence was immediate and permanent. The legal outcomes of our divorce reflected Texas law regarding fault-based dissolution of marriage and child custody determination based on the children's best interests. Kate's affair, job loss, and reduced earning potential were factors the court had to consider in dividing assets and determining support obligations. Emma and Tyler's preference for living primarily with me wasn't manipulation or alienation, but rather their rational response to Kate's behavior and its consequences. They'd observed her poor judgment, witnessed the impact of her choices on our family's stability, and made decisions about their own lives based on which parent could provide better guidance and opportunities. The success I'd experienced professionally and personally wasn't revenge against Kate, but rather the result of maintaining integrity and focus during a crisis. Business relationships that were strengthened by observing my character under pressure had created new opportunities that I'd worked hard to develop and deserve. Amanda's presence in our lives wasn't replacement for Kate, but rather the development of a healthy relationship based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for Emma and Tyler's well-being. The contrast between Amanda's thoughtful approach to our family and Kate's deceptive, selfish behavior made the differences clear to everyone involved. The transformation that occurred in the 3 years following that canceled poker night had created a stronger, more honest foundation for our family's future. Emma and Tyler had learned valuable lessons about integrity, consequences, and resilience that would serve them well in their adult lives. They'd seen that poor choices lead to predictable outcomes, while consistent character creates lasting relationships and opportunities. My own growth during this period had taught me the importance of paying attention to relationship dynamics, rather than assuming that professional success and family routine constitute a healthy marriage. Amanda and I had built our relationship on open communication, shared interests, and deliberate attention to each other's emotional and intellectual needs. Kate's experience had demonstrated the interconnected nature of personal and professional integrity. Her willingness to deceive me about her affair had been accompanied by willingness to violate professional ethics, misuse public resources, and compromise educational programs for personal benefit. The character flaws that enabled her infidelity also made her unsuitable for continued leadership in education. Blake's career destruction illustrated the consequences of establishing patterns of inappropriate behavior that eventually catch up with professional advancement. His history of pursuing married colleagues had created a reputation that made him unemployable in education even before his relationship with Kate was discovered. The community's response had shown how quickly social standing can change when behavior violates shared values and expectations. Kate's reputation as an innovative educator had been built over 15 years but destroyed in 6 weeks when evidence of her misconduct became public knowledge. The school board's policy changes ensured that future administrators would face better oversight and clearer expectations about professional conduct. Kate's misconduct had served as a cautionary example that improved the system for protecting students, families, and educational staff from similar situations. 5 years later, as I write this account, Emma is completing her junior year at UT, with plans for graduate school in educational psychology. She's expressed interest in eventually working in school administration, but with a clear understanding of the ethical responsibilities and professional boundaries that Kate violated. Tyler is now a senior in high school, team captain of the basketball team, and considering offers from several colleges that want him to play basketball while pursuing an engineering degree. His success in athletics and academics reflects the stability and support he's received since our family reorganized around honest relationships and clear expectations. Amanda and I have been married for 2 years, and our household has developed the genuine warmth and intellectual connection that was missing from my marriage with Kate. We share interests in education, community development, and family activities while maintaining our individual professional identities and personal friendships. Kate has finally found more stable employment as an administrator for a nonprofit organization that provides services to adults with developmental disabilities. The work uses some of her educational background while allowing her to rebuild her professional reputation in a different field. She seems to have accepted that her career in school administration is permanently over. Her relationship with Emma and Tyler has improved as they've matured and gained perspective on the family crisis. They maintain regular contact and include her in important events, but their primary emotional bonds and daily lives remain centered around my household. Blake disappeared from our awareness completely after leaving Texas. Occasionally, I wonder what became of someone who sacrificed his career for a temporary relationship. but his impact on our lives ended when he abandoned Kate and fled the consequences of their misconduct. The poker game that was canceled on October 12th has resumed its regular schedule, with the same group of friends who provided emotional support during the most difficult period of the crisis. James, Kevin, and Anthony became genuinely helpful allies who offered practical advice and maintained normal social connections when other relationships were complicated by community gossip and legal proceedings. The Thursday night routine that once represented comfortable predictability now serves as a reminder of how quickly life can change when hidden problems are suddenly revealed. I'm grateful that James's food poisoning led to the discovery of Kate's affair before it caused even more damage to our family and community. The systematic investigation and documentation that followed was essential for protecting my children's interests and my professional reputation. Without comprehensive evidence of Kate's misconduct, the divorce proceedings could have been more difficult, and the community response might have been less supportive. The legal advice I received from Robert Hayes and the investigative work Lisa Turner provided were critical for ensuring that Kate's responsibility for the marriage's dissolution was properly established and documented. Their professional expertise guided me through a complex situation where emotional decisions could have led to poor outcomes. Patricia Coleman's willingness to present evidence of educational misconduct to the school board was essential for ensuring that Kate faced appropriate professional consequences for her behavior. Without that accountability, she might have continued in her position while conducting an inappropriate relationship that compromised educational programs. The support I received from community members, business colleagues, and church friends provided emotional strength and practical assistance that helped Emma, Tyler, and me navigate the crisis with dignity and focus on rebuilding our lives. Amanda's professional background in family therapy and her personal commitment to our children's well-being created the foundation for a relationship that has enhanced rather than complicated our family dynamics. Her integration into our lives has been gradual, thoughtful, and beneficial for everyone involved. The lessons learned from Kate's affair and its consequences have strengthened my character, improved my parenting, and enhanced my professional relationships. The crisis forced me to examine my own contributions to marital problems while maintaining clear boundaries about acceptable behavior and personal responsibility. Emma and Tyler have developed resilience, integrity, and clear expectations about relationships that will serve them well in their adult lives. They've seen that actions have consequences, that character matters more than temporary convenience, and that honest communication creates stronger foundations than comfortable deception. The community has benefited from improved policies and oversight that help prevent similar misconduct while maintaining high standards for educational leadership. Kate's violation of trust has resulted in systemic improvements that protect students, families, and educational staff. Most importantly, the family that has emerged from this crisis is stronger, more honest, and more loving than what existed before Kate's affair was discovered. The comfortable routine we'd previously maintained had been built on assumptions and avoided conversations rather than genuine connection and mutual understanding. The relationship Amanda and I have developed, and the family we've created with Emma and Tyler, represents the kind of authentic partnership that was missing from my marriage with Kate. We've learned to communicate directly about problems, support each other's individual goals, and maintain the emotional intimacy that sustains long-term commitment. The poker game that was canceled 5 years ago led to the discovery of deception that was poisoning our family's foundation. The investigation, consequences, and rebuilding that followed were difficult but necessary for creating the honest, stable, and loving home that Emma and Tyler deserved. Kate's affair was her choice, made repeatedly over 6 weeks, despite numerous opportunities to end the deception and address whatever problems she felt existed in our marriage. The consequences she experienced were the predictable results of violating personal, professional, and community standards that she'd previously understood and respected. The rebuilding that followed wasn't revenge, but rather the natural process of creating better relationships based on honesty, integrity, and mutual respect. The success we've achieved as a family reflects the strength that comes from facing problems directly, rather than avoiding them through comfortable routines or deceptive behavior. Life is better now than it was before, that Thursday night when James canceled poker. The crisis Kate created forced all of us to examine what we really valued and what kind of family we wanted to build together. The answers to those questions led to the stronger, more honest, and more loving relationships we enjoy today. The systematic approach I used to investigate Kate's affair and document her misconduct reflected the business skills that had served me well in commercial real estate. But the emotional strength to rebuild our family came from the support of genuine friends, the resilience of my children, and the commitment to integrity that guided every decision throughout the crisis. Emma and Tyler will carry the lessons they learned from this experience into their adult relationships and professional careers. They've seen that character matters, that honest communication creates stronger bonds than convenient deception, and that facing problems directly leads to better outcomes than avoiding difficult conversations. The community has been strengthened by the accountability that followed Kate's misconduct and the systemic improvements implemented to prevent similar violations of trust. Educational leadership requires the highest standards of personal and professional integrity, and those standards are now better defined and enforced. Amanda and I have built a marriage based on the authentic connection and honest communication that was missing from my relationship with Kate. We've learned from the mistakes that contributed to my first marriage's failure while creating new patterns that support long-term commitment and mutual growth. The poker game continues on its regular Thursday night schedule, with the same friends who provided support during the crisis and continue to be important parts of our lives. The routine that once represented comfortable predictability now serves as a reminder of the importance of genuine relationships and honest communication. Kate's story serves as a cautionary tale about the interconnected nature of personal and professional integrity. Her willingness to deceive her husband was accompanied by willingness to violate professional ethics, and both forms of dishonesty led to consequences that permanently altered the trajectory of her life. Blake's destruction demonstrates how patterns of inappropriate behavior eventually catch up with professional advancement and personal relationships. His history of pursuing married colleagues created a reputation that made him unemployable in education and unsuitable for lasting romantic partnership. The investigation and documentation process that revealed the full scope of Kate's misconduct was essential for protecting my children's interests and ensuring appropriate consequences for her behavior. Without systematic evidence gathering, the crisis could have been more damaging and the resolution less satisfactory. The legal proceedings that followed were conducted according to Texas law and based on documented evidence of Kate's adultery and its impact on our family. The outcomes reflected her responsibility for the marriage's dissolution and prioritized our children's need for stability and security. The community's response was based on violation of trust and professional standards rather than personal vindictiveness. Kate's position as an educator and community leader required higher standards of behavior, and her misconduct appropriately resulted in loss of confidence and professional opportunities. The rebuilding process that has taken place over 5 years has created stronger foundations for our family's future success and happiness. The relationships we've developed are based on honest communication, mutual respect, and shared commitment to integrity and growth. Emma's academic success and Tyler's athletic and academic achievements reflect the stability and support they've received since our family reorganized around authentic relationships and clear expectations. They've thrived in an environment where honesty is valued and problems are addressed directly. My professional success during and after the crisis demonstrates that maintaining integrity under pressure creates opportunities and strengthens business relationships. The character I displayed during difficult circumstances has enhanced my reputation and generated new opportunities for growth and service. Amanda's integration into our family has enriched our lives and provided Emma and Tyler with an additional source of support, guidance, and love. Her professional background in family therapy and her personal commitment to our well-being have created the foundation for lasting partnership. The systematic investigation of Kate's affair revealed not just her infidelity, but a pattern of deception and poor judgment that extended into her professional responsibilities and community commitments. The consequences she experienced were proportional to the scope of her misconduct and necessary for protecting others from similar violations of trust. The policy changes implemented by the school board ensure that future educational leaders will face better oversight and clearer expectations about professional conduct. Kate's misconduct served as a catalyst for improvements that strengthened the entire educational system. The friends and community members who provided support during the crisis demonstrated the value of genuine relationships and shared values. Their assistance was essential for navigating the legal, professional, and emotional challenges that followed Kate's affair. The therapeutic support Emma and Tyler received helped them process the crisis and develop healthy perspectives on relationships, integrity, and personal responsibility. Their resilience and growth reflect the quality of professional guidance and family support they received. The business relationships that were strengthened during the crisis have continued to generate opportunities and success. Clients and colleagues who observed my character under pressure have become advocates for my professional capabilities and personal integrity. The marriage Amanda and I have built represents the kind of authentic partnership that was missing from my relationship with Kate. We've learned to communicate openly about challenges, support each other's individual goals, and maintain the emotional intimacy that sustains long-term commitment. The transformation that has occurred over 5 years has created a family foundation based on honesty, integrity, and mutual respect. The comfortable routine that previously masked underlying problems has been replaced by genuine connection and authentic communication. Kate's experience illustrates how quickly a respected professional and community leader can lose credibility when personal choices violate shared values and expectations. Her rehabilitation efforts have met with limited success because the damage to her reputation was both severe and justified. Blake's exile from education and his reduced career prospects reflect the consequences of establishing patterns of inappropriate behavior with married colleagues. His pursuit of temporary physical relationships cost him the professional identity he'd spent years developing. The legal resolution of our divorce was based on documented evidence and applicable law rather than emotion or vindictiveness. The outcomes prioritized our children's welfare and reflected Kate's responsibility for the marriage's dissolution. The community's ongoing support has provided emotional strength and practical assistance that facilitated our family's successful reorganization. The relationships we've maintained and developed have enhanced our quality of life and created opportunities for service and growth. The educational improvements that resulted from Kate's misconduct have strengthened oversight procedures and clarified expectations for professional conduct. Her violation of trust has led to systemic changes that protect students, families, and educational staff. The Thursday night poker game that was canceled 5 years ago has resumed its regular schedule with the same friends who provided crucial support during the crisis. The routine now serves as a reminder of the importance of genuine relationships and the unpredictability of life's challenges. Emma's plans for graduate school in educational psychology reflect her interest in contributing to the field where Kate's misconduct occurred. Her career goals demonstrate her commitment to professional integrity and her understanding of the ethical responsibilities that accompany positions of trust. Tyler's success in basketball and academics reflects the stability and support he's received from our reorganized family. His achievements demonstrate the benefits that come from honest relationships and clear expectations about character and performance. The story that began with a canceled poker game has evolved into an account of crisis, investigation, accountability, and rebuilding that has created stronger foundations for our family's future. The systematic approach we use to address Kate's affair and its consequences has resulted in better relationships, improved opportunities, and lasting lessons about integrity and resilience. The comfortable predictability that once characterized our family life has been replaced by authentic connection and honest communication that supports genuine growth and mutual understanding. The transformation has been difficult, but ultimately beneficial for everyone involved. Kate's affair was a choice that reflected her character and priorities at a particular moment in her life. The consequences she experienced were the predictable results of violating personal, professional, and community standards that she'd previously understood and respected. The investigation and documentation that followed were necessary for protecting our children's interests and ensuring appropriate accountability for misconduct that affected multiple institutions and relationships. The systematic approach we used was essential for achieving satisfactory resolution. The rebuilding process has taken 5 years and created family relationships based on honesty, integrity, and mutual respect. The success we've achieved reflects the strength that comes from facing problems directly rather than avoiding them through comfortable routines or deceptive behavior. The lessons learned from this experience will continue to guide our family's decisions and relationships throughout Emma and Tyler's adult lives. They've developed understanding of integrity, consequences, and resilience that will serve them well in their personal and professional endeavors. The community has been strengthened by the accountability that followed Kate's misconduct and the systemic improvements implemented to prevent similar violations. Educational leadership requires the highest standards of personal and professional integrity, and those standards are now better defined and enforced. Amanda and I have created a marriage based on the authentic partnership and honest communication that was missing from my relationship with Kate. We've learned from the mistakes that contributed to my first marriage's failure while building new patterns that support lasting commitment and mutual growth. The poker night that was canceled 5 years ago led to discoveries that were painful but ultimately beneficial for our family's long-term welfare. The crisis forced us to examine what we really valued and what kind of relationships we wanted to build together. The answers to those questions have guided every decision throughout the investigation, legal proceedings, and rebuilding process. The family that has emerged is stronger, more honest, and more loving than what existed before Kate's affair was discovered. Life is unpredictable, and Thursday night poker games sometimes get canceled. But the character we display when facing unexpected challenges determines whether those disruptions lead to destruction or opportunities for creating something better than what existed before.